Lord Jesus Christ and pray that the Holy Spirit will give us today the grace that we need. And whether you're joining us here or online, that God will touch our hearts with extra grace today, especially if you are visiting or you haven't been here for a while. We pray that you will feel the warmth and love of Christ today. And if you have been hungry on the way, seeing some cake. There we have the birthday month, and so this has kind of been becoming a tradition for us again, having the cake between the worship services. But you can have it on the way out as well. Today we continue the sermon series in the shelter of each other, and the invitation of this is to look at our human need for belonging, that we need others. As much as we try to act like, we can be independent from each other, our growth, our spiritual journey is always enriched by the presence of other people. And so we've been looking through Bible stories that deal with different aspects of being in the shelter of each other, but we've been using this book by David Brooks called How to Know a Person. And so the art of seeing others deeply and being deeply seen, which is a challenge for us in most of our encounters, even in our intimate relationships, even in our family connections. Sometimes it's hard to have that depth of connection with others. And so one of the things that often gets in the way is good conversations. Being able to have not just shallow conversations, but really good, deep conversations, heart conversations. Kay Lindahl, in her book, The Sacred Art of Listening, talks about the importance of listening in conversations. Listening is a creative force. Something quite wonderful occurs when we are listened to fully. We expand, ideas come to life and grow, we remember who we are. Some speak of this force as a creative fountain within us that springs forth. Others call it the inner spirit, intelligence, true self. Whatever this force is called, it shrivels up when we are not listened to, and it thrives when we are. And so the invitation is to visit that as a skill. Because one of the things we often assume that everybody is on the same page in conversations, or we have barriers and it's hard to bridge them. And one group that's working on that in our country is called Braver Angels. And they've been doing this because of the growing political divide among people. So they've been bringing people from different perspectives together to share and to grow together. So I want to show you a video of this example because it kind of fits in really well with the idea of being a bridge builder. And that's kind of the mission of being a Christian, to build bridges to people, to connect with others and see them as God sees them. So here's the clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you this. There is reason to be hopeful in our country today. There is reason to hope, not because we agree on all of the issues, but because on the issues that we disagree upon, we still disagree as good people.
That the country is more polarized than at any time since the Civil War.
People aren't listening to each other, and if you and I disagree, then I'm just evil.
Republicans, Democrats.
This isn't democracy anymore.
One group believes it can get done.
Braver Angels is the nation's largest grassroots organization. It is bringing people together from all across the political spectrum.
Promising seeds being planted in the nation's heartland when it comes to healing.
We have reason to believe in our prospects for a brighter American tomorrow. But it only works if we hear each other.
When we first started Braver Angels, it was just 3 or 4 of us. We were going around the country, sleeping on people's couches, trying out the workshop.
Methods, training, giving them what they need to engage their communities, engage political leaders.
It only works if we listen to one another.
To be part of the solution and turn the tide on the toxicity that is tearing at the fabric of the nation.
So we did 40 of those over the course of the summer. We didn't have any idea that that would turn into thousands of these workshops.
And what I found consistently, people do bring their best selves, and they do learn, and they do change.
Half conservative, half liberal, meeting together, just trying to talk to one another rather than at each other or about each other.
Sat in multiple rooms where I would have not expected the conversation to move so gracefully.
In today's political climate, to be in a group like this, talking about really controversial issues like abortion and immigration, it's just amazing.
We just had no idea that it would grow like this.
There's just so much potential for Braver Angels.
Our work on college campuses and our work with political leaders.
Elected officials who take our workshops who say, this helps me do my job.
26 workshops.
727 points of agreement from all of those workshops.
I didn't realize how powerful this is.
I'm leaving this place with a sense of grace and hope for our future and our nation.
And so the invitation is to take this example, to take the many examples in our lives. Have you had people in your life who have listened to you well? Yeah? How does it feel when somebody listens? It feels great, especially when we are upset. So you're laughing. What's funny? I'm not. Art is not sure. Yes. He's married to Carol, so Carol is always. Yeah. No, I'm not on anybody's team. You braver angels to really bring that. And you know what's interesting about this ability to listen is that you see the humanity of the other, because that's one of the things that happens when we don't listen to others, when we don't listen deeply, when we don't listen to what is really going on within them, is that we don't see their humanity. We reduce them to a label, good person, bad person, enemy, friend, or someone I like, someone I don't like, someone who's liberal, someone who's conservative, someone who's voting for the person I don't like, someone who you start going down that list and you stop seeing the humanity of that person. That's what happens in war. People do that to each other, and actually soldiers are trained a lot of times when they have to drop a bomb on somebody. They have to not think of them in the same way as human beings, because you can't do that. It's something in us. We're born, we're created that way as people who see the value of others. As much as we struggle with each other, as much as we have a difficult time with each other, there is that deep bond that we share. And so I pray today that we'll explore this and look at what Jesus does with this kind of struggle when the conversation doesn't go well. And so let's take a moment to breathe and focus ourselves, center into this moment of grace. As we listen to this scripture from James. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And please join me in the call to worship. We gather as the faithful of God. We come to listen to what God has to say to us. We gather as the faithful of God, people of the new covenant of hope and promise. We gather as the faithful of God, our fears melting away in the heart of God. Amen. And please join me in singing the first hymn for the beauty of the earth, hymn number 473. And please stand as you are able. Please be seated. For gratitude moment today, we are grateful for all these September birthdays. If your name is not up on the list and you've had a birthday, please let us know. But we give thanks to God for this gift of life and the gift of connection and friendship and the sense of belonging through this community of faith. And also today I want to give thanks for an event that's coming up, which is happening on the this first Friday of October, but also 3 Fridays after that, every Friday in October except for Halloween. We are hosting families with children at the House of Bounce. So if you have grandchildren or you have children that are connected to your life, please invite them to come. And so we give thanks to God. I invite you at this time to share any prayers of joy or concern that you may have. If you have something you'd like to share, please raise your hand and I'll be happy to bring a microphone to you.
Special prayers for Leslie as she's going to have her kidney transplant on Tuesday morning.
Yes, prayers for Leslie. And prayers for Cindy Shubmel as she's recovering from back surgery. And tomorrow is the funeral of her aunt at East Bethany Presbyterian Church, but she's struggling to see if she's going to be able to make it. Cindy Shubmel.
Yeah. Over. We'd like to ask for prayers for our friend Barb Holder, who has been in the hospital all this week with pneumonia. Thank you.
Do you want to share anything about Florida and all the hurricane stuff?
Well, it's a mixture between joy and concern. The concern is for all the people with Hurricane Helene, damage and loss of life. The joy, I guess, is that Don and I are not going on Tuesday like we had planned. We'll go down hopefully in the spring and be able to go sit on the beach and see sunsets again.
Yes.
Bradenton. This would be Bradenton, Amber Island is totally closed right now. It's so.
If you're not a resident, you're not welcome.
Yes. So a lot of change for people with this, and it's a lot of people are without power. I know Dana Warren from our congregation. She was telling me yesterday that they have no power, and that's the case for a lot of families.
My brother and sister-in-law live in North Carolina, and they've been affected too. They're without power and separated. She's at work, and he's home, but we're just worried about him.
Prayers for them. Prayers for all. I mean, the stories are horrific, and I cannot imagine a whole community just being wiped out just with that. So prayers for all the people who will step forward to help. Anything else? Let us continue in prayer. God, we come before you with hearts heavy for a world in distress, in places of war, in places of natural disaster. We come praying for healing, for wholeness, for strength and stamina, for those who step forward and help others. And for those who are grieving, may you give them the strength and courage that they need. God, we pray for ourselves in those places where we need healing. We're especially mindful today of Leslie and praying for her surgery, but also the recovery and all that needs to happen. We give you thanks for her family and their support and love that we know will be a shelter for her. God, we pray for Cindy Shibmel and her family and all who are grieving the loss of her aunt, Mike Haywood, and pray for strength and stamina for whatever needs to happen for Cindy tomorrow. God, we pray for ourselves in those places where we struggle with others, where we feel divided, where we feel afraid, where we feel anger or holding grudges or feeling slighted, or whatever it is that separates us from others, that we may see as you see us, and help us to see the potential for healing, for wholeness. God, we pray for the gift of your Spirit to be in each of us, to teach us your ways of love, of connection. And now we come before you for a few moments of silence. And we continue in prayer using the words our Lord Jesus Christ taught us to pray, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. always an appropriate prayer for us to remember the words of the psalmist, inviting us to bring our hearts before God, especially as we speak about conversations, because sometimes conversations could go really off the rails. In many ways, we don't intend to have those disagreements or difficult conversations or bad words with others, but then they do happen. And what do we do with that? Sometimes all that we can do is ask for God to forgive us. And so today, as we think of this topic of good conversations and the importance of those conversations for our daily life and our connections to others, I couldn't help but think of one of the major issues that we often face with our politicians is that when they dodge the question. You know, there's the debate coming up on Tuesday, the vice presidential debate. And any of you are planning on watching or just ignoring? But whatever. If you ever watch any of the, even if it's not a debate, even if it's just an interview, a lot of times you see a lot of dodging. And I found this video explaining, or trying to explain what happens for politicians. And this is from England, so we don't have to think, and this is from a few years ago, so it's not really right now, but it kind of gives you an idea of what goes on behind the scenes.
One of the things politicians are always accused of is not answering questions.
I did not
overrule him.
I did not overrule Derek
Did you
Lewis.
threaten to overrule him?
I took advice on what I could or could not do.
Did you threaten to overrule him, Mr. Howard?
In accordance with
This kind of thing is really annoying, and it makes politicians look untrustworthy and slimy. So why do they do it? Politicians all suffer from chronic job insecurity. If they say anything stupid, they could be unemployed within hours or days. That's why if they're being interviewed on TV, on the radio, in a newspaper or in the street, one of the dangerousest things they could do is answer a question. Let me show you what could go wrong if you give a straight answer in an interview. The answer is £5,136.45. The interviewer might know more than you do. Yes, but according to this piece of paper, the figures are actually closer to £10,746,986.92. Your words can later be used against you. Yes, but in a previous interview you said a different figure, which was £4,988,702.11. You risk alienating voters. So, do you mean by that answer you just gave that you want to cut lots of jobs? Well no, I mean... You mean you're in favour of waste? That's why politicians are scared to commit to anything. Being rumbled will make them look hypocritical, or worse, incompetent. So if you're a politician, how do you get through an interview without putting your foot in it?
Hi, I'm Peter Botting, and I actually exist. Do you want to survive the next election? Are you positively petrified of being powerfully pummeled in a partisan political probing? I can make you bulletproof. 1. Don't like the question? Change it to a different question.
Well, I think what we should be asking is...
2. Use vague yet committal vocabulary.
Look, let me be clear, interviewer's name. Robust plan.
3. Imply that the interviewer is too stupid to understand the real answer.
Well, that's a really complicated question, and we don't have all day, so let me try and explain it simply.
4. Change the subject and talk about something dreadful your opponents have done.
Let me just change the subject and talk about something dreadful our opponents have done.
And finally, 5. Give an answer that's so confusing, nobody knows if you've said anything at all.
Well, I'm glad you've raised that question, interviewer's name, so let me be clear. This is an issue that we're very concerned about, and it's about time that we stopped dithering, got round the negotiating table, got it sorted, got this right, stopped getting it wrong, and made sure that this issue doesn't get raised again, at least not during the course of our government, without asking permission first.
Look, it's important we have a robust response.
And here's the thing.
The argument, James, I'm putting is this.
That's not kind of the issue. The issue is if we sort of stand back and look at the big picture.
So stop making sense and save your skin. Call today!
It's a real pity that this man and several more like him exist, but the reason that he and his clients are so successful is because these tricks keep them out of trouble, demonstrably. Just look at this graph. We have to face the fact that in a media increasingly driven by sound bites, where everything you say lasts forever, politicians are never going to give straight answers. Their job security matters more than their job being done effectively. So, what's the solution? There isn't one. It's naive to assume that we're owed a solution to this awful, worsening, inherently unsolvable problem. That's it. Bye.
Doesn't give you a... Yes, Don.
I never realized it until I saw the videotape that we have no women politicians.
That we have no women politicians. This is in England, and this was a few years ago. So, yes, good observation, but you totally focused on the wrong thing. But, okay. Let me change the subject to something. Let me reframe this for you. It's really interesting to think about the many ways we struggle. And you know, you look at them and you're like, why don't they answer the question? There are many traps for a conversation. In the first service, someone was telling me where she got a complaint at her job because she tried to just help someone feel at ease. So she was just asking a few questions. You know, how are you doing? You know, where do you live? And then the complaint was submitted to her boss saying, hey, this was intrusive. And so sometimes you're trying to do the right thing and you end up being punished for it or being misperceived, misunderstood. It's not always easy. It's not, good conversations don't always happen as we intend for them to happen. And so I want to invite you to share any of your experiences of having struggles with good conversations. Yes? Okay, do you want the microphone so people could hear? Well, I think then people could hear you. Especially...
Nobody wants to hear me.
Yes, we do.
No, I appreciate what you just showed because I am one of the many who is very frustrated when they don't answer the question.
Right.
Especially my candidate of choice. It's like,
right.
well, you've got a good answer. Why aren't you giving it? This is so true because they will be quoted and quoted and quoted and misquoted.
Right.
And I thought this was excellent.
It helps you understand because people are being trained. I think our politicians, unfortunately, if they do it any other way, and I don't care which side we're on, that's the kind of the norm. That's what people are told. You know, you got to do it this way. That's how it works. But you see it sometimes in companies. I know I've been in meetings where, you know, people ask you, why did you make this decision? Say it's a personnel decision. Why did you make this decision? I'm sorry, we can't say anything because you'll have a lawsuit. If you told what had happened, what the person had done, people will come after the church. So, I mean, it could be any company, or someone calls for a reference. I've had to be trained as well to say, I can't really tell you about this person. Because, you know, then they say, so the only question they can ask, would you rehire this person? You can say no or yes. But you can't really tell what happened. Again, these are things that, unfortunately, in the normal course of conversation, you would do these things because it's helpful, especially if there is an issue that the person may present and you want to help the next employer understand what went wrong, but you can't. Well, and so there are things that block us. It's pretty amazing. Actually, I was thinking of Dave Van Scoy. He would often counsel us because he worked as a superintendent of schools and he had to deal with so many issues, personnel issues, and he sat on the personnel committee here with us and he'd be like, oh, can't do that, can't say that, even though your instinct is to say, you know, this is what we would like. It's very hard, though. So there are many, many barriers that way, but politicians are in a tough spot. Anybody else? Any other thoughts of what gets in the way of a good conversation? Facts? Yeah? So, you know, actually, that's a good point that you bring up, because sometimes you think, I'm just stating the facts. Have you ever said that? But facts according to whom? You know, because it's a perspective. You know, you're bringing a perspective to anything. I mean, none of us can stand and say, oh, yes, I see things objectively. This was a couple of sermons ago, by the way. No such thing as objective seeing. Yes, there are facts, you know, there is science sometimes, but even that could be twisted by people. You know, you could take a statistic, simple statistic and can twist it in any way you'd like. So it's not always easy. The facts, yes, stating the facts. The facts according to whom? And what do you do and how are you interpreting those facts? Any other struggles in conversations? All your conversations just go really well? Yes?
I think negativity.
Negativity.
Destroys a lot of good conversations. If you're talking to someone who's a positive person,
Right.
you're going to be able to have some facts and look at it in a different
Right.
view than somebody who's always negative.
Someone who might be negative, it's hard sometimes to get through to anything. Like to have a door, an opening, give me a little window, but there's nothing. Everything is shut. No matter what you say, they've made up their mind. And I'm glad you brought this up because that's kind of what happened in the conversation for Jesus. Linda, did you have something to share? No? No, I thought you were raising your hand. And so Jesus, according to this story, and by the way, this story is a story that shows you what not to do, how not to have a conversation. And a lot of times I read scriptures and I always want to identify with the good guys, by the way. I always want to say, oh yeah, I would be the one to see or the one to do the right thing. But oftentimes the challenge is to put yourself in the shoes of the person who did the wrong thing. Because that's part of this human experience. So Jesus had already had a confrontation with the religious leaders in Jerusalem. He had gone in, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem happened, and he went in and cleansed the temple, raised a lot of questions, because this was a prophetic act, which prophets in ancient Israel did to kind of make a point. So he made a big point and people were watching. And these were the high holy days of Passover. And so the Roman government was watching, heightened security. This was not the time to do this kind of thing, in their opinion. The religious leaders were collaborating with the Roman government, trying to make peace as much as possible. It wasn't a great alliance, but this was what they came up with to maintain some semblance of their religion. And so Jesus had done this and really angered them. They were upset. They were trying to trap him. And he goes into the temple, and then they have a conversation with him. But it really wasn't a conversation. It was a trap for Jesus. So let's listen to Luke 20, the first 8 verses. One day as he was teaching the people in the temple and telling the good news, so Jesus is doing the normal thing, the chief priests and the scribes came with the elders and said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who is it that gave you this authority?" He answered them, "I will also ask you a question, and you tell me." So he turns the tables on them, because he knew that this was a trap. Because if he answered in whatever way he answered, he was going to be blamed. "Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin?" So they go and have a little meeting. They discussed it with one another, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why did you not believe him?' But if we say of human origin, all the people will stone us, for they are convinced that John was a prophet." So they answered that they did not know where it came from. What do you think of that answer? Cowardly. You know, they took the easy way out. They didn't want to deal with the issue. Dodged the question, the whole question. So then Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." So that he knew they weren't open to a conversation. They had everything set up and everything in their minds was just a sham. It was just a way to trap him. It wasn't a real conversation. Now, the interesting thing for me in this story is that in the Jewish tradition, conversation and discussion and dialogue and disagreement were at the heart of the faith. It's not like, for us in the Christian tradition, we sometimes are afraid to express our disagreement, say, with a pastor. But the rabbis encouraged that. This was the way they did it. They would sit and discuss and come to different approaches for interpreting the scriptures. And that was seen as a good thing. They didn't lean into that because they were already afraid. They were already trying to protect themselves. So a couple of barriers for good conversations that we can learn from this story. Judgment. So they went in with their minds made up. Have you ever gone into a conversation, your mind is already made up? Or you've been in the conversation with someone, their mind is already made up. You're a bad person to them, you've already made a bad choice, they're done with you, they don't want to talk. And they're just out of politeness, they wanted to say, okay, we'll talk to you, but they really don't want to listen to you. Or they are obligated to listen to you because of, family connections, or they're there for Thanksgiving dinner, and you're like, oh, I got to deal with that. Whatever person you disagree with. And I hope to God they don't bring up that one issue we disagree on. But there's the judgment. And sometimes we look at a person, and you don't even have to have a long history with them. Sometimes we look at them and make a judgment because of their ethnicity, or the way they're dressed, or what we think they do for a living, all kinds of things that get in the way and get us to be in that place of judgment. So judgment, in this case, they already prejudged Jesus, bad guy, and they couldn't see the potential that he was really not seeking. I mean, they totally missed the point. He was not seeking to be a military leader. This was the last thing on his mind, to go into Jerusalem and get people riled up and rise up as revolt against the Romans. That's not what Jesus wanted to do. In fact, that's what his disciples at first wanted him to do. And he kept telling them, you're missing the point, you're missing the point. And here, these religious leaders, if they had just listened to him, if they had not come with that mindset, they would have heard a totally different story. But their minds were made up. So big barrier to good conversations. Pre-planning. So I know that sometimes you have to plan what you say because there's a difficult situation and it's delicate and you're going to be thinking about your conversation. Or one teacher was telling me, I have to think about what I say to parents during parent-teacher conference. So you got to prepare, but you have to be flexible. So your pre-plans cannot be, okay, if they say anything else, I'm out. I'm not going to talk about anything else. Or there's no give and take. There is no opening because you already pre-planned what you're going to say and you're done. And so that's what they did. They had planned what they wanted to say, and when Jesus came back at them with a question, they're like, whoa, we don't know what to do. And they had to have a little conference on the side. They're like, what do we do? Oh, let's just pretend we don't know anything. We don't know. That's an easy way out. Have you ever done that? Sometimes, yes. You've done it, yes. Yes, all of us have done it, where you're like, somebody tells you, do you know who, whatever the thing, they're coming hot and they're angry, and you do know, but you're like, not sure. I'll get back to you on that one, because you don't want to be on the receiving end of their wrath. And so, but pre-planning is really tough, to be in that place of evading, kind of like the political system that tells people, you go, even no matter what they ask you, you just have, you know how to respond. And it's very frustrating because you don't really get to hear the person for who they are, for what they may have for ideas. So another issue is self-preservation. So most of the time, a barrier to good conversation is that we are feeling triggered. We're feeling afraid. Think of these religious leaders. Again, they're not the bad guys always in the story, because they, I think, stand in for us. When we are in that place where, Jesus asks a hard question of us. Did you do this because you really cared, or did you do it for self-preservation or to get credit from people? Sometimes God nudges us to say, are you doing this because you really care, or you feel obligated, or you feel like somebody's expecting that, or this is the way to earn people's respect, or whatever it is. So self-preservation comes into a lot of conversations. Someone says something really that hits hard for you, and you're feeling the pain. And sometimes we just stand there and say, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then your friend comes in, well, how did you feel? Somebody just lambasted you and you don't know oh, I'm fine, it doesn't matter. But inside, it did matter. It hurt really bad. And you were triggered, but you pretended, or you had a mechanism for dealing with it, a coping mechanism. Then there is that sense of lack of vulnerability. So instead of saying to Jesus, aha, you got us. That would have been an honest answer to say, yeah, we're trying to get you, but you really turned the tables on us and you got us. This is a tough question that you're asking. Oh no, they went into that, protect ourselves no matter what. And I loved in the video the guy talked about self-preservation for a lot of politicians, that they feel like my job is on the line. And how many of us, when the job is on the line, would you speak your truth? Or our relationship is going south, and you really want that person to like you, and you will just withhold your truth. Or you don't know how to handle it, and you can't say to the person, I have no idea how to handle this situation. Because that's an honest answer to say, or an honest question. How would you like me to handle this? What do you expect out of this conversation? So all of this to say is that difficult as it may be, there are ways, and Jesus leaves us a great example, because he could read what was happening in the room. He could see where they were going. And he gave them an opening, by the way. It didn't have to go that bad. It didn't have to be an ending. It could have been an opening for them to tell him what was going on with them. But they didn't. They chose to go that route of fear and self-protection. And so how do we create spaces in our own lives to have good conversations? I think the first most important piece is to check yourself, to check where you are. What's happening within me? Why am I reacting this way? And sometimes, you can't have the foresight ahead of time. Sometimes you have to go home and say, why did I say such a thing? I didn't mean a word of what I just said. Or, I really was out of line. I shouldn't have said that to that person. That was very, unkind or hurtful or untruthful. What is it? Foot in the mouth. Yes, I just said something I shouldn't have. And we all do it. I mean, no matter how reserved you might be or thoughtful you might be, there are moments, sometimes especially we do it with our loved ones, when we feel, our guard is down, and we just say sometimes the cruelest stuff to our loved ones. But there is grace. You can go back and say, hey, what I said was really out of line. I was so upset. This is what was going on within me. Of course, that takes so much courage. Oh, I tell you, I've been in those places where I wanted to tell what was really hurting within me. And your tears start coming down, and you're like, oh, so hard. Why can't I just say the truth? Because we're not taught to do this. It's not normal. It's not normal because normal is to hide underneath the facade that we put in front of people. And then the other thing is to focus on what you're trying to accomplish. If that relationship means anything to you, take time. Take time. Think about it. If it is your neighbor who is having difficulty with your politics or with your bushes, being encroaching, and sometimes people fight over leaves. I heard that recently. Somebody said that, they had a big problem with this neighbor, and they I mean, I've heard about this neighborhood, and it's right here in Batavia. I don't know the man at all, but he seems to be a tough neighbor. And so these new neighbors came and said, okay, if he's going to be like that, the leaves that come down from his tree, we're going to put on his side. How do you think that went? The cops were called over leaves. You know, think about it. I wouldn't want to be the cop because I'd be like, are you serious? I mean, people are dying or... It's your neighbor? It's every neighbor. Maybe it's you, Art. But think about it, how difficult that is to deal with. Your neighbor is doing something really so unkind, and it is so hard to share vulnerability with them, to say, you know, I really hate when you do this. I'm really struggling with this. Can I tell you what's going on with me? Because they may call the cops on you. I mean, there is a risk there, and your lawyer will probably advise you, do not talk to them at all. Have you gotten advice from lawyers where they tell you, do not, under no circumstances, tell them what's going on with you? And that's tough. So I am putting all of this out, but there are plenty of opportunities when we can really grow into deeper conversations. And so here are some skills. This is from David Brooks, from his book, How to Know a Person. He says, a good conversation is capable of leading people on a mutual expedition toward understanding. So it helps us to really explore the truth together. And so he gives a few skills, and I want to highlight two of them. One is looping. Another word for it is mirroring. So when you're talking to someone and they tell you something, and just reflect back to them what they shared with you. And sometimes it helps to add a little bit, so, you're going to tell me an event in your life. So today was really busy at work. I really struggled to get things done. Oh, so do I hear you say that you had a tough day at work and you might be feeling tired and exhausted because it was so intense? Oh, no, I was just telling you, so they may correct you, or you may not have heard all that they wanted you to hear. It's very important to listen and to offer that piece, because it helps the other person know that you're paying attention. Sometimes someone might be coming to you with a complaint. Such and such happened, and the response is usually deflect, blame, or avoid. Oh, look, Doug is sitting back there. Maybe you should go talk to Doug about that. It's easy to do that. It's easy to go in that direction. But a more mature way, or a way that builds connections or helps people feel like they're listened to, is to really say, what's going on? Let me hear, let me listen, not try to respond. Maybe sometimes you just need to listen. Can't do anything about it. Just listen. I remember this from counseling. One time, this was a marriage disagreement that we had early on in life when we had a little child, and Mike wasn't always on top of scheduling. It drove me insane. I would get really angry. I'd be like, oh, because I'd be at work and I'd get the call from school. He didn't pick her up. Like, what? What were you doing that you forgot? We ended up going to counseling over this. That's how serious it got, because I was like, I can't take this one more day. I'm going to kill him if he does it one more time. And so it was funny that the counselor, and I will never forget it, because he said, oh, we could put this in a container. I said, what do you mean? So he said, just tell him how you feel. And all he has to do is just listen. That never happened. Usually he's defensive. He's telling me about what had happened, and I'm overreacting. It's not the end of the world. She was fine. It wouldn't have been the end of the world to be picked up 20 minutes late. And people at your job, they understand. It's the church. All of that. He just listened, and he reflected back to me what I was going through, and it was a shift for us. It was a major shift. Because I was like, oh, for the first time he heard what I was struggling with. And by the way, that was the last time that happened. We didn't change anything. I didn't change anything about him, but he really finally heard how it made me feel. That, to get the call while I'm at work and this kid is waiting for a parent to pick her up. And for no reason not to be picked up. Because we'd already put it on the calendar. I mean, people would give me all these things. Oh, just put it on the calendar or share a calendar. I'm like, oh, yeah. That doesn't work. It needed to be a heart conversation. And don't tell Mike about this story, by the way. He'd be mortified. It was... No, I didn't. I don't know why it came to my mind. I just remembered that whole container thing. It was so powerful to be able to say, to tell my truth and to really be listened to. Because every time there were excuses, there were issues, and then it would just bring up a lot of triggers for me. Because I'm a person that likes, okay, if I committed to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to sit there and say, I'll get to it later. But it helped me understand. So think about that. Looping is very powerful. Then there's finding the disagreement under the disagreement. And so this is about values. Why is that other person upset? What's going on with them? Why is this issue important to them? And asking what is going on for the other person. David Brooks says, when arguing, the natural thing is to restate the issue the way you do. You go back to your positions. The more interesting thing to do is to ask, why at heart do we disagree? What is the value? What is the value disagreement underneath our practical disagreement? So there's usually something important for that person, a value, a core value for them that is being violated. And if you hear that, compassion grows, and then you see the humanity, you see God in that other person. You say, you know what? I still don't agree. But I see them as a valuable person. They care about something, and that's why this is important to them. And so, in all of this, I want to invite you to pause when you are working with others, or talking to your friends, talking to your neighbors, talking to your family members, and allow that space. Be like Jesus. Don't be on the reactionary part of the conversation. Be in that proactive place. Create space. Give them a challenge. Maybe sometimes it's a reframe, putting the question back to them, or whatever it needs to happen, allowing that space to grow for authentic listening, for authentic sharing. It's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it. And I do have a list of questions that David Brooks lists in his book. If you don't receive the weekly Bible devotional, let me know. I can send you the list, because I think, did I put that list in there? Frank, you read that list. You don't recall. You didn't memorize what I sent. Fine. But think, if you'd like that list, let me know. It's a really powerful list, because it has all these questions that are very helpful in terms of a deeper conversation than the surface stuff, to help people tell you where they are and who they are and what's going on within them. And so I invite us to give thanks to God for the gift of the example of Jesus. He'd been put in so many different situations and so many different conversations, and every time there's grace. Every time there's that sense of finding an opportunity to expand somebody's life, to find a new adventure, to create space, even for his enemies, to grow and to find healing. And so may we be like him. Amen. Please join me in singing the final hymn, We Are All One in Mission, and this is hymn number 435 in your hymnal. And please stand as you are able. May you listen to your life and hear it as a sacred story that you're in. May you listen to your body as to your dearest friend and honor what it has to tell you. May you listen to your dreams for the mysteries that they hold and know them as the wise guides of your soul. May you listen for the silent voice of God in the cave of your heart and give in to the solace or the summons that you hear. May you listen to the other, whether friend or stranger, human or more than human, with a reverence and eagerness due a beggar or a saint. May you listen at the margins to those who live on the edge, so that your center will not hold unless it holds the edge. May you listen to the wild in all its many dialects and forms, and humbly let it teach you what it has learned from the beginning of time. Amen. And may you go in the peace of and grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Please turn to your neighbors and greet them with that peace.